If anyone finds my car off the B417, I didn't abandon it. I'm writing this because I don't think anyone would believe me if I tried to report it properly. I don't expect this to fix anything. I just need it recorded somewhere outside my own head, while I can still describe it clearly. I turned off the main road because the map rerouted me. There was a closure ahead, that's what the screen said, and it offered a faster route through a village I'd never heard of. The detour looked simple, maybe 10 minutes at most. The road narrowed after the turn, and the hedges grew taller on both sides. My signal dropped to 1 bar, and then to nothing. The map froze for a few seconds before updating again, but the blue line still showed a road ahead, so I kept driving. The village was just there. It wasn't large, maybe 20 houses with stone walls, small front gardens, and one narrow main street. Several houses still had their lights on. I saw a car door open halfway down the road. A garden hose was lying across a driveway, water still running slowly into a flower bed. Everything looked like people had stepped away for a moment and hadn't come back. I slowed down and rolled forward carefully. There was nobody around. I didn't see any movement in the windows, and I couldn't hear any voices. I parked near what looked like the center of the village. There was a small shop with its doors propped open, and next to it a pub with the lights still on and drinks left on the tables. At the far end of the street stood a large church with both doors left open. I stepped out of the car and called out once, just to hear something break the quiet. No one answered. I walked toward the shop and looked inside from the doorway. The lights were on. A basket full of bread sat on the counter, and the register drawer was open with coins scattered across the floor. Behind the counter was a kettle near the sink. I touched it. It was still warm. Outside, a child's bicycle lay on its side in the street with one training wheel bent inward. A front door halfway down the road stood open, the curtain shifting slightly in the draft. I checked my phone. No signal. The map showed open farmland. No roads, no buildings, no village. I got back into my car and tried to reverse the way I'd come. The road curved between two houses, so I followed it slowly. It led me back to the same houses, the same open doors, the same garden hose still running into the flower bed. I parked again and walked toward the church. The doors were still open, and I stepped inside. Candles burned low near the altar. Books lay open across the benches. A coat hung over one seat, and muddy footprints marked the stone floor leading up the aisle. There was no one there. At the front of the church, a wooden board with numbers on it read 312. I sat down on one of the benches, trying to think clearly. When I stood up again, the board read 407. The pieces that had formed 312 were lying on the floor beneath it. I hadn't heard them fall. I turned toward the entrance. The doors were closed. I pushed one, but it didn't move. That's when I noticed the benches had shifted. The first row angled inward. The last row closer together than before. I moved to the side door and stepped outside. It was darker now. The shop lights were off. The pub lights were off. Every house was dark. My car was closer to the church than I remembered, and the driver's door was open. I was certain I had closed it. I got inside and tried to start the engine. The dashboard lit up, but the engine wouldn't start. When I stepped out again, someone was standing at the far end of the street, just standing there, facing me. I looked down at my phone. No signal. When I looked back up, the figure was halfway down the street, still facing me, still not moving in any way I could see. I locked myself inside the car and tried the engine again. Nothing. Through the windshield, the figure stood in the middle of the road with its arms at its sides and its head slightly tilted. I looked down at the dashboard for a second. When I looked up again, it was directly in front of the car, close enough that I should have seen its face. A church bell rang out without warning, loud and heavy, the sound hitting the windscreen. I flinched and glanced toward the tower on instinct, just for a second. When I looked back up, the street was empty. My side mirror caught movement. The church doors were open again, and every light inside was on. I left the car and walked back toward it. The doors stood wide open. Light spilled across the steps and onto the square. Inside, every bench had been turned to face the entrance. All of them, perfectly aligned toward the doorway. I stepped further in. That's when I saw the footprints. They crossed the aisle from the altar toward me, damp against the stone, and continued past my feet toward the exit. I looked back toward the doorway. A light flicked on in one house, then another, until the entire square beyond the entrance was fully lit. I heard doors opening. I ran. I cut between two houses toward the open fields. Behind me, I heard doors closing in sequence. I climbed over a small wall at the edge of the village. The stones shifted under my hands as I dropped into the field on the other side. It was open ground, uneven and dark, stretching away without fences. I stood there for a moment, catching my breath. Then I turned back toward the village. The wall was behind me, but there was nothing beyond it. No church tower, no roofs, no windows, no light. Just open land where the village had been. My car keys were still in my hand. I stood there for a moment, looking across the open land. I started walking. The ground dipped and rose under my feet, grass dragging against my legs as I moved. There were no tracks, no sound of an engine, no sign of where the road had been. I kept going until I saw a strip of real road ahead, cutting across the dark. When I checked the maps later, there was no detour listed that night, no record of any road closure, no village anywhere along that stretch. I went back the next morning in daylight. There was nothing there, just fields. If anyone finds my car off the B417, I didn't abandon it. And if your map ever sends you down a road you didn't know existed, keep driving.